Okay, so this is day 2, Mishlei 22:9. Okay, so we'll review and then we'll do meforshim here. Okay, so tov ayin hu yivorach ki nasu milach mo ladal. So one who is generous, he will be blessed because he gives or gave from his bread to the poor, or to, so either dal is poor, meaning just stam socioeconomic level, or impoverished, meaning someone who became poor, who used to be not poor, or someone who is low, like in wretched, like Alder said, right? Some other state. All right. Questions. What does tov ayin mean in this context? Right. So we translate as generous because I think that's the normal idiom. But then the question also is, even if it means generous, why is it called good of eye? You know, like what does that imply? Also, how frequently do you need to be giving generously in order to be considered a tov ayin, okay? Or to get the bracha, sorry, to get the bracha. Also, do the guy's motives matter, or is it just exclusively defined by his actions, regardless of the motive? All right, 2, blessed in what way? How does the bracha come about? 3, what is a dal? And if it does describe someone who became poor, then why does that matter, right? Or I guess why does it matter in any case? 4, what is the cause and effect relationship between this bracha and this specific type of generosity? Right. Yeah. In other words, how does it work? How does it get you the bracha? And what about if you are generous, but you don't give from your bread to the poor, or if you're just generous in other ways? 5, what does kinasan milachmo ladal mean, practically speaking? Is he diminishing his own portion? That's what milachmo means. Or does it mean that he's just giving from his supply of sustenance? Lechem mean, let's say he has like tons of sandwiches and he gives out a sandwich, right? So is he splitting the sandwich, or is he giving out one of many sandwiches? So to speak, as the saying goes. All right. What does 6? Do the two people have to interact in order for this to be true? That was Ariel's question. Like, is it the guy? Is it from his interaction with the poor face to face, or is it just the fact that he gave his stuff? 7. What's the opposite? And 8. Who's the audience? Okay. So first idea was Ariel's, which I found support for in the Saadia Gaon, which you don't have, and I don't have the screen, so I'll just read it to you. Saadia Gaon in his commentary on Mishlei says. It's half of it is Ariel's. Okay, it says Yivarchuhu b'nei Adam ba'aretz. People will bless him on earth. Okay, why? So this is the interesting distinction here. Mi shehetiv lo derech toda lo. Someone who he benefited will bless him by way of gratitude. Okay, umish lo hetiv lo, but someone who he did not benefit, like let's say people who were not poor, derech simcha bo. He'll benefit them out of way of simcha about him. Okay, we'll analyze that in a second. And then he said, so that's brachos from people, and that's the approach Ariel wanted to take. Hold on just 1 second here. I have no way of knowing whether, usually Isaac's my sound check. Okay, this is working, all right, because I plugged it in afterwards. Hold on, one more line here. He says, the other bracha is, Vayvarchehu Hashem min hashamayim. God will also bless him from heaven, ba'olam hazeh al derech hamofes, in this world through miracles, which assumes hashgacha, and then ul olam haba etzem hagumul, and in olam haba the essential reward, which I think is going to connect to Oren's idea. Yeah.
To clarify, saying tov ayin is like one who others look well at him.
No. He's saying tova. I think he is saying tov ayin is a generous person, like the translation of Saadia Gaon. But he's saying the bracha is coming from other people.
Okay, interesting, because it doesn't seemingly have that flip effect of others do all, everybody else seems to relate.
That is true. Yeah, I don't sense that that's why he's called a tov ayin, but yeah. Okay. All right. So the question is, it's like we understand with gratitude, because when you do something good for someone, it creates like a indebtedness, you know. But what does he mean by like derech simcha bo? Right.
It makes people happy.
Right. I just want to understand that a little bit more, like how that works.
It's a little weird to say that, like, the third parties are happy.
Yeah. What kind of happiness is that? Yeah.
But can you clarify that, because I didn't really.
So another's like this. So let's just do role playing here, right? Sure. So let's say I'm the tov ayin person. Okay. So when I give my half sandwich to Isaac, David, who does not need sandwiches, is happy, and that's what makes David bless me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what Saadia Gaon said?
That's what Saadia Gaon says. Yeah. I mean, I think there is a phenomenon, not just limited to generosity, but like when you see someone who is just like doing good things, there is a feeling of like I want this person to succeed. What was that?
It like warms your heart.
Yeah, warms your heart, but it's also like I want to facilitate this person's success in some way. Meaning, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to start splitting their sandwiches, but they will, like, endorse and help this person to do what they're doing. Yeah.
I
Yeah, sure. Hold on. I just want to give one example. Is like, this is a kind of a lame example. Like sometimes, let's say you see someone like, I don't know, setting up for an event, right? So there are always the people who immediately snap into action and like volunteer to like help. And then there are the people who don't do it on their own, but then when they see the other guy doing it, then they're like, oh yeah, I could do that too. And then they go and like help the guy, you know? So I would say that the first person really is generous. Second person is definitely doing a good thing, but I wouldn't necessarily call them, I wouldn't say if they had the quality of generosity, they would do it, they would initiate it, you know? But it's like, I want to help the person, you know? And then you got the people who just like applaud them on the sidelines, you know, which is not the same. Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe it's like when you see somebody else doing a good thing, you're like happy that you're in a good community.
Yeah.
Sort of like I don't know, like there's like a couple of videos on like YouTube about like boundaries about like Consella or stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like a cool thing. And like when I see this, I'm always like, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. That's also good. Yeah. I mean, that fits in more with the Saadia Gaon's Simcha bow, right? Of Simcha, you know, in him. And we also, you know, the bracha, like, what does it mean people bless him? I mean, sounds like just verbally, like saying like, good job. And sure, that reflects like an emotional relationship, but like the essence is that rooting him on, you know? Yeah. Okay, so that's Saadia Gaon. Okay, so now let's review the other idea, right? So Oren's idea, we're calling it Oren's idea. I can't remember all the people who contributed, but so Oren's, let me try saying it, and you tell me if I'm missing it, or anyone tells me if I'm missing anything, is why is he called Tov Ayin? So he's called Tov Ayin. It's true, it manifests as generosity, but really we define tzedakah is giving every existing being that which is befitting for its existence, which means you're looking at them as a creature as creation, essentially, as an existence that has needs. And when you look at another human being, you realize the fundamental equality that you have because you're no different in terms of your essence. All of the differences are just in terms of accidental features, but this is a human being who has a life, who deserves, you know, have his needs taken care of just like me. So if I have a sandwich and he has no sandwich, and I'm not going to die if I split my sandwich. It's a different question. I think if you have one dose of medicine, you know, but like, but I'm not going to die if I split my sandwich. Fine, I just won't eat as much. But like, this guy gets sustenance. So you see, so it's called Tov Ayin because you see the common humanity that they have, and that's what prompts you to give generously, you know. And the way we explained it is, it's specifically if you give from your bread, meaning you diminish your own sustenance, because it's good to give tzedakah, but there's a different feeling, like it challenges the idea that I have an intrinsically greater claim onto this than the other guy, when you actually have to give up what is your proper portion, you know? So that's why it's milach mo. And the idea of the pasuk of the bracha is, if you initiate this action by giving from your bread to the poor, it reinforces this idea of the common humanity, which then makes you more generous, which then makes you, reinforcing again and again and again. And it's a positive feedback loop. So the bracha is not from people, even though that's true. The bracha is the fact that you actually perfect yourself by actually gaining the perfection of recognizing like true tzedakah, which is what Saadia Gaon was referring to when he said in Olam Haba, like, what's the reward for tzedakah in Olam Haba? It's perfection of the soul. It's not perfection. It's not helping people. It's helping people is good for Olam Hazeh, but and it's good for your middos, but your middos are also in Olam Hazeh. But the real good is like the perfection of the soul that you get from Olam Haba. Yeah.
So as far as this being a Mishlei idea, how does that fit with your general understanding of how Mishlei ideas come about?
So Ariel's explanation is much more in line with my approach to Mishlei in terms of brachos in this world.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So for this one, I mean, the Mishlei's general approach also towards perfection of the soul, according to my approach, is that first of all, when you have a more perfected soul, you make better decisions as well. So it's not like this is irrelevant, you know. And like so many mistakes come from viewing yourself as different from another person, you know. Especially if you go back and listen to any pasuk that Sean has given an interpretation to, I feel like that's an element that he emphasizes a lot in his ideas. This is water, right? The anatomy of peace, but so it definitely helps you in a Mishlei decision-making sense. But I was also going to say, what was I going to say? Hold on just a second. I have one more idea. Oh yeah, I was going to say that the way that Shlomo Melech gets you to, even in my approach, I mean, the premise is Mishlei psukim are golden apples encased in silver. And our approach to Mishlei is to focus on the silver, but that doesn't, or as Miri would say, to focus on the nigla instead of the nister. But that doesn't mean that we ignore the nister. And so the recognition that perfecting your soul is a good thing, and if I do this in this world, then I'll get to that. Like that's part of the continuum of my. In other words, Mishlei is already going to be telling you how to do tzedakah in so many other areas. This is pointing out, like, oh, in doing this, you're going to end up becoming more of a embodying tzedek, and that's going to be good for all the other olam hazeh Mishlei reasons. And this puzzle is just pointing you. By the way, you're going to get this other good perfection also. Yeah, you had a question on that, and then
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
It's like darkness.
Yeah, Sarah, right? Yeah.
2 points. One, I think also specifically this pasuk that says who yivarech will be blessed. We were saying yesterday that that's the true blessing. So
Yeah.
it could be it's more likely that in this pasuk specifically we're talking.
That's
about
true.
True.
Right. Well, I think also actually the way Saadia Gaon did it is the perfect way to interpret it, which is that it's deliberately ambiguous, meaning that the person who's only interested in success in this world will see it as people will bless me. And then as you mature, you start to realize, well, the real brachos are not from people, it's from olam hazeh pleasure. And then you start to realize, well, the real bracha is not olam hazeh pleasure, it's perfection of the soul, So like it allows you to mature as you go on. Oh, hold on just 1 second. I just heard an idea. Do I have it or did I delete it? Hold on just 1 second. From Rabbi Moskowitz. If I can't find it immediately, hold on.
Okay, we're doing Habakkuk.
No, that's not. Yeah, so I deleted it. So he was explaining why. So this is a shiur on Yehoshua, Sefer Yehoshua, and about the stopping of the sun. And he was talking about like, obviously stopping the sun is not physically what's going on, right? Like the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun, or so, yeah, the earth goes around the sun. Well, the earth rotates on axis, and that's what it also goes around the sun, but whatever. So he was saying, why does the Torah, then he said that the way of Torah in general is to speak from the perspective of human beings, right? And that's one of the things I write about in my whole post on how to teach first parak of Bereshis, that unlike, if you look at all the other creation stories in other cultures, all of them pretty much involve miraculous, supernatural, magical, mythical, ethereal things. If you look at Bereshis, there is nothing in the first parak of Bereshis that is not an object or item that we see in our everyday life.
What about God?
It doesn't depict God.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
He's there though.
Yeah, he's there, but it doesn't. The only verbs that are used about God are speaking and doing. It doesn't describe any physicality about God, and whatever. You can read my post if you're interested. So this is a style of Torah. Okay, so that's where I would have taken it. But where Rabbi Moskowitz took it was he said that he was saying how there's a developmental thing in a child where if you just take a kid and you start off by like telling him some advanced theory of physics, it's not going to jive. What you have to start off doing is explaining it in ways that are in line with the way he sees the world, and you progress beyond that. So let's say, I don't know if you ever had the thing with the first time that, I don't know if this is like whatever. First time they teach you how day and night works, and they have like a flashlight with like a ball, and like you see the ball like going around, so you don't start off with that. You start off by telling the kid that there's sunrise and sunset, that it goes up, the sun comes up and goes down. Then when they're capable of more abstracting, then you show them the higher level. And so what Rabbi Moskowitz was saying is, why do you do that? So I would have just said because it works better. He said because if they do accept the more accurate interpretation, they're going to be accepting it based on authority, instead of accepting it based on what's real to them. So you start off by teaching them on the simple level by what is real to them, and you gradually progress to the more abstract thing later on. And if you just tell a kid like, hey, curvature of space-time, then they might accept it, they might understand it, but it's not going to be a natural development of their sense of reality, So I think Mishlei uses that same method of like telling it to you on a level, like if I said, oh, you're going to get the true blessing. And let me explain to you what that is. There's a Tzelem Elokim and it's not physical. And like in Olam Haba, we don't understand anything about Olam Haba, but somehow your soul merges with the active intellect and like, it's eternal. And like, like, I don't understand that, So, but what you do is you say, oh, you're going to be blessed. And you let the kid think that the only blessing is people are going to compliment him, then, so he attaches to that because that's a reality. He knows what it's like to be complimented by people, Then you go on and say, oh, there's brachos that people will want to help you. There you say the reality of psychology, that people will feel indebted and that's going to pay off for you. Then you go on to like Olam Haba when they're ready, So it's like really part of the derech of Mishlei. Yeah.
Separate point, just the same question from yesterday.
Yeah.
About whether you actually need to act this out to really get the idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. So your question was, whether you have to act this out to get the idea, or what happens if you have a person who, let's say you have this tova ayin and there are no poor people in your town, right? So would you say that person is equal to the guy who's actually enacting it?
Right.
It's just, he hasn't been able to express it. Or is the guy who hasn't been able to express it actually lacking a perfection because he hasn't enacted it?
Right.
And by perfection, I mean an actual perfection. He's whatever, like, just that's what I mean by perfection. So what? You say he's lacking? Okay, why?
Because he's not doing it myself.
So what's that matter?
It's like let's go back to tzedakah for a second.
Yeah.
Like if every time you give tzedakah,
Yeah.
it's supposed to like help you eternally, whatever it is.
Okay.
You're not doing that myself. Yeah, you may have, you may have the personality to do that, but if you don't act on it, like you're lacking in that progression.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna.
Just to comment.
Yeah.
But you're a moda that really
You're commenting on questioning.
Question. You're a moda that really the tzedakah is only reinforcing the idea. So if you already have the idea perfectly, then there's no need for reinforcement. If you really have a perfect idea.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Question on that though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an Scotsman, but like, can you make the claim that he has the idea perfectly if he can't actualize it and if he hasn't done it? And then I would argue the reason that it's lacking is because, in a sense, he might have all the right intentions, but he's kind of like an armchair philosopher. He's not in the situation.
No. Okay. Well, I'm going to object on both scores. One is it's only circumstantial lack that he's not enacting. I would agree that if he wasn't doing it, like, in a situation where it could be done,
Then he's for sure lacking.
Then he's for sure lacking. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
But how can you know that you're gonna do it?
Let's say he knows.
That's not even the question.
Right.
I'm not asking whether he knows. I'm
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
whether he has.
Yeah. Right. Let's say in God's eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want?
I was just gonna say about that. That's,
Yeah.
This like the thing about shiur gemura.
Yeah.
That like the Rambam says that you shiur gemura is in the same situation.
Yeah.
And it's not like you have to like put yourself in the same situation for that. It's the
Right. I was also thinking about Shiva Gemara. Right. So I think that definitely is talking about the internal state, right? That with Shiva Gemara, you don't actually have to put yourself in that. That would just be like the litmus test, But here, so are you arguing in favor of the fact that he is the same or he's not the same?
No, I was just saying that I think there is a real thing. It's just you wouldn't be able to.
You're saying that halacha shows you that there is a real thing as being perfected, even if you're not actually in the state.
Yeah, just that you wouldn't be necessarily able to do
Right.
that before, but
Yeah.
I have a different thing.
Oh, you have a different thing? Okay.
Yeah. I think the question is maybe a little bit based on a faulty premise that's easy to slip into, which is I think there's this like feeling that a person's ideas and like state are fixed, and then if you have this idea clear to you, then that's like a thing that just like lasts forever.
Mhm.
And I think it's people gradually change based on what they're exposed to and what they're doing and like things like that, and like their environment changes them, and it might be like completely clear to them today, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be completely clear for the next month, or that they're going to like still be the same that person who would do that next month.
Right. I'm going to let Ezra respond to that. Just his question.
And so just doing the actual actions like reinforces it. It makes it more concrete in your person.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you're really admitting that you could have just as good as perfection, just whether just doing the action will make it last longer, probably.
Well, he's saying.
But really,
like,
you
in
do
the
have
moment
those-
right now,
I'm
not in the
saying
moment
to,
right
like,
now.
Right, just give an extreme example, like let's say, like the minute after I split my sandwich with a guy and give it to him, am I like now less perfected because I'm not in the midst of doing it? Like we're like is a chair when no one's sitting in it? Like like it's like there is. I think what Isaac is saying is true, that there is a reality that there's no fixed state of your perfection and it's constantly in flux. But that is to an extent. I mean, this is not the right term. It's a quantitative phenomenon in the sense that like things are constantly like quantitatively shifting and like diminishing and like strengthening. So like I don't know if they're two mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Yes, just to add to that, I think what you're really saying is that you could have, to my understanding, you're saying that you could have the greatest perfection. Just the way to keep that perfection is to do the actions.
Yeah, like I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
like, it might be like today, if you were in the situation, you'd wholeheartedly give the guy the
Yeah.
sandwich. And then whether or not you're actually in the situation, I think it's not going to change who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need to constantly be manifesting every
Yeah.
aspect of perfection.
Right.
But if you aren't in the situation, then and you don't have do actions that make it concrete, then like it's easy for those things to disappoint. I think that's what Torah does. Like
Yeah.
is it has you actually do actions of the perfection to help keep it a part of it.
Right. I'll after Oren, I have some just
Yeah,
supplement that with.
on that very last point.
Yeah.
I didn't know it's going to be on that last point. So
Yeah.
you said it. But I think this question kind of applies to almost any mitzvah because all mitzvahs are nasa v'nishma, and so my general theory that I've got from a lot of places, probably from you among them, is that generally mitzvahs kind of work almost like cognitive dissonance, if you know that is in psychology, where if you let's say you have some idea, I want A, but then you actively do B, and your mindset will change such that now you want B. So like if you do something that's against your mind will change to be in accordance with your actions rather than you'll change your actions to be in accordance with your mind. And that's how mitzvah work.
Yeah.
So all mitzvah have some sort of idea behind them, and then when you do that action, that idea becomes more and more real to you. Like, so you can know that God is one, but when you say Shema, that idea gets brought home yet more. So it's the same thing here. You could have Tov Ayin all totally conceptually, but it's not a real thing to you. And once you actually do it, then it becomes it's like another level. It's like more concrete to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's bringing up a good point, just a comment on what he's saying. But, it's like, I guess the question is, in terms of mitzvahs, let's say you're, let's say you both your arms cut off, right? You have to punch on.
Yeah.
You're supposed to punch, they can't, right?
Yeah.
Now you may have the philosophical ideas, whatever, blah, blah, but is he lacking and not putting on his own?
Right.
Is it honest?
Right.
And I think there is an element.
I think there's a lack. Yeah.
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 So I think so too over here. There is a lag. It's just,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I just want to and you could argue that this is taking in a different direction that the pasuk is not pushing us in. But I gave a shiur earlier in the year called Rabbi Kiva's View of Human Existence or something like that. There's a Mishnah in Avos that says that God judges the world lefi rov hamaaseh velo lefi hamaaseh. He judges the world according to the quantity of action, not according to the action. Okay, so I'm going to read my translation of the Rambam's commentary on that. He says that good middos are not acquired on the basis of the great quality of the action, but on the multitude of the quantity of the actions. This is because good middos are only acquired when man repeats good actions many times, and through this, man will attain a disposition for this. Not when a person does one great action out of the good actions, because through that action alone, he will not acquire a disposition to this. Now, he'll give an example. For example, if a person gave $1,000 in one shot to a person who was deserving of this, he would not acquire the trait of generosity through this one great action in the same way as a person would acquire it through giving $1 in 1,000 acts of generosity on 1,000 occasions. because this latter person repeated the action of generosity 1,000 times and thereby acquired a strong disposition. But this former person who did it once, his soul was aroused with a great arousal for a good action, and then that arousal ceased. Likewise, in Torah, the reward of giving a person who redeemed one captive with $100 or who gave $100 of tzedakah to one poor person who needed it is not as great as someone who redeemed 10 captives or fulfilled the needs of 10 poor people, even at $10 each. You should apply this similarly to other cases. And this is the meaning of the statement, according to the multitude of actions, but not according to the action. And this is why, like in my, for those of you who are in my self-improvement group or whatever, for my experiment from Lag BaOmer until Shavuos, this is why when I'm giving tzedakah to Tomchei Shabbos, I'm doing it every day and entering my credit card information every time, as opposed to doing it all in one shot or making on repeating payment because of this, meaning in terms of the result, I would accomplish the same thing if I donated it all in one shot, but I'm going through the process of like trying to acquire the disposition of generosity, and doing it every time is going to impact me in that way. And I think you could say also based, and this is why this is a subdivision here, that like the guy who is sitting there with sandwiches and no poor people to give to, and the guy who's like splitting his sandwiches every day. So there is a difference. But even if that one guy who gave the sandwich, splitting a sandwich once is not going to be the same as doing it many, many times in terms of tov ayin, in terms of the midah of generosity. The midah has to be reinforced, like what you were saying. Yeah. Yeah.
To this point and to Orion Ariel's point.
Yeah.
I'm definitely agreeing that you could get a lot more out of doing the action.
Yeah.
But I'm asking in like the ideal sense.
Theoretical sense.
Right,
yeah.
If you have the most can you have the most perfection without that?
Yeah. And I'm now saying that that I think until you, I keep on going back and forth. Because the thing again, the test case that I'm saying is like 5 minutes after the guy does it, is there any real difference between 5 minutes after he does it and 1 minute after he does it? I would say there's no real difference, but 5 days after he does it, if he doesn't reinforce it, then maybe, and 5 years, certainly,
right.
So now if I look 5 minutes before he does it, like, is that really so different than 5 minutes afterwards? Like, did he,
Well,
I think
there's a 5 minute thing. I'm not understanding that.
Well, because I'm acknowledging the reality of what Isaac said, which is that there's no, perfection is not a fixed thing. It's not like a collection of objects that you just keep in your card binder, but your middos are constantly shifting, and if you don't practice, there's probably a phrase for this. Is there use it or lose it? I was trying to think use it and lose it. No, that doesn't make sense. Use it or lose it.
Don't do this.
I don't want to say that like, the reality is like that perfection.
Well, the sandwich, yeah.
You have the ability to do it every single time. And if you don't do it one time, then you're laughing, whatever. You have to do it every time. That's just
right. But what I'm saying here, so what the move that Isaac is introducing into Ezra's question is like, I think when you ask the question, I don't know how you were thinking of it, but the way I was thinking of it was like it's like an unopened envelope. One, like for the Academy Awards, right? Like one thing says you have the perfection of tov ayin, and the other one says you don't, and you don't know until you open the envelope, right? But what Isaac is saying is it's like what? Yeah, what Isaac is saying is it's much more like not exactly as far as Schrodinger's envelope, but it's much more like a constantly shifting thing inside. And so doing the action does reveal what your current state of perfection is, but it also, the note you're adding is it also maintains it and upkeeps it, and I just don't think I think I was thinking of it in more black and white terms when you were saying it yesterday. Yeah.
But you could also, I would argue that you could probably keep that perfection if you think about the idea every day and don't act it out, but just think about this perfection every single day and reinforce it in your mind.
That's what I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I think that.
All right, I mean, that's what I don't agree with. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can affect your psyche as well just by thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think
that's the premise of Mishlei, really, is that you have to affect it on the psychological level. Yeah.
Like if you think about it's fun,
Yeah.
Basically just thinking about it isn't gonna like get you there. I think it's possible that, like, I'm not even 100% convinced about this, but it's possible that just think about it can get you to the higher state of perfection, is what your premise is. But I'm like I definitely don't think you can maintain it by just.
So
thinking about it.
is that going against your Tshuva Gemara example? Right, because Tshuva Gemara was saying that you can perfect yourself to completely change, undo the Avera or the Avon, and then even without getting into that
And
situation.
promise to never do it again.
And promise to never do it again, right. And God can see you and testify that you're not gonna do it again.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So I say you can get to that.
Yeah.
that point, but I think that
And just to say what we do agree with though, we're agreeing that you can't know that you've gotten to that point,
yeah.
and you also can't guarantee that you're gonna maintain it.
And
You
it's
know.
extremely difficult to get there.
And it's
without
extremely,
action.
exactly, yeah.
Right, just
I mean,
ideally
right.
impossible.
Yeah, and by the way, just the I don't know the exact lashon, I don't know where to look it up, but when Rabbi Akiva died, or when he was being tortured and said Shema, and his students asked him like, what are you laughing about? And isn't the lashon like, all my life I was mitzdayer,
Yeah.
like I was in suffering, but was it?
It was because he
He
didn't
didn't
have
know
the
he
He
chance.
didn't know. Yeah, that's how. Yeah, he didn't know that whether he merited that, and then now he knows it, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting if that's the lashon. Again, I don't know where it's going to take me too long to look it up, but like that seems to indicate that he was at the level. It's just that you can't actually, like, in other words, if he got a new perfection from b'chol nafshecha, from actually having his life taken from him, then he would have said, I was mitzdayer because I didn't have the opportunity to reach that level.
Right.
But if I didn't know whether I was at that level, it sounds like he did reach that level. But again, it's not, like you said, it's really hard to get to the level without being put in the circumstance, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'd say, unless you're already like at like the peak of it, then like if let's say you're like let's say you would choose to make this decision, but you'd be in conflict over it, then that like does wonders for you in terms of like helping you like get further there.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
I also just want to say this is not directly answering the question, but I think that we should all recognize that there is a tremendous drive or like rationalization that we especially are prone to convince ourselves that you could get perfected just through thinking, and that many times that can be an obstacle to actually getting to perfection. So I think if we're going to err on one side, the side to err on would be action. Which again, I'm not saying this is consistent with the Rambam and the Sefer Chinuch and all these other people who emphasize action, but like I think we're recognizing that you're prone to like, of course we want to think that you can get it just through learning. Like I can just sit here learning about tzedakah and they get perfected without like going to a soup kitchen or whatever, Yeah.
Or even saying like, even if you were to say that it is through action, still, I think even within that side, you would still have to admit that it's far easier to do it through action. I mean,
Yes.
through thought, even if you would say through thought, you would have to admit it's far easier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And the reason why is because what middos are physical. Middos are in the psyche, right? And so training the psyche through things that impact the psyche is going to be way easier than training the psyche through things that affect the mind. Only a real high level chacham can do that.
Yeah, the only saving grace for us over here is the others. I think we're in this, at least in this yeshiva, they didn't have the Torah, so how could they, keep certain mitzvahs? Well, they left their stop.
No, to the contrary, Avraham Avinu did tzedakah. Like,
No,
if
I'm
you-
not talking about like Basar Chalab and all those other things.
right, but I'm saying if you look at the depiction of Avraham Avinu in Chumash, you see him doing very little philosophy and very much action. What was that? Hakanas Zorga, yeah.
So then what does Rashi mean when Yaakov kept trying to mitzvahs?
I mean, maybe
That's a great question,
that's-
but yeah.
Maybe that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, is he did it through action. Like, why are you saying that that's philosophy? Like, no, they came up with they had other ways of gaining perfection, but those. Well, tefillin is not relevant. I don't think there's a tefillin.
Yeah, there might be a combination. I'm not excluding
Maybe,
one or the
yeah,
other,
yeah.
but, like,
Right.
that's what that.
Yeah. Okay. So what answer did we get to? Are the two guys the same? The guy who has acted on it and the guy who has not acted on it? Let's see if we can boil it down.
Yeah, so I think.
It might not be a yes or no.
Okay,
But yeah.
I think at least what I'm saying is, if the guy, and like I'd say only in the impossible hypothetical are the same.
Okay.
And only temporarily.
Yeah.
Because the guy's already like fully perfect. Like it's like the myth of like the perfected person. That's
Yeah.
not an achievable.
What? Now you tell me? 22 years I've been working. Yeah.
Yeah, if someone is fully perfected, then
Yeah.
it wouldn't. Then like this wouldn't affect them.
Yeah.
But like they wouldn't be able. You can't maintain it without action.
Yeah.
But doing the action helps you maintain it. And if you're not already like perfect, which
Yeah.
everyone isn't, then it helps reinforce it.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
And it does change you.
Right. Okay. I agree. That's where my understanding also. Yeah.
Just, I think, at least my understanding is slightly different,
Okay.
that I
Back in.
agree.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I agree in the ideal sense.
Yeah.
I'd say there is no difference between someone who just thinks and somebody who does the action, with the perfect thinker
Mhm.
and then the actor. But in like 99%, I wouldn't say it's impossible, like you were saying, but 99% of cases, or even more than that, you have to act in order to get.
Okay. Hold. I just want to acknowledge the question shifted between you two. I think. Right. I think, which is that one question is how do you can both of them get to the same perfection? You know, the guy who does it only through thinking and the guy who does it through action. The other is in the snapshot of the guy who, whether you can have the same perfection. Right, because you were answering in terms of it's rare to get to it through thinking, right?
Right, but I mean, even have it.
Even have it.
Even, I tell you, in the ideal situation,
Yeah.
you could even maintain it forever, I would think.
Uh-huh.
To have this perfection without any action in the
ideal situation, yeah.
Which for almost nobody.
Yeah, it's gonna be
See,
very,
like,
very.
even Moshe Rabbeinu did actions,
Yeah.
and
At the end of his life.
Right. Separating the cities or miklat, is that what you're thinking of?
I'm thinking of whatever Rabbi Zimmer brought up in his Sunday share about how Moshe wanted to do half a mitzvah at the end.
Yeah, that's the Ara miklat. Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
right. So like it's for every single person. I think it would be almost impossible to just do thought and get to the level that someone who acts
Yeah.
could get to.
Yeah.
But like in the ideal sense, I would say it is probably possible.
Okay. I hear that. Oren's been. I just want to hear what Oren has to say. Yeah.
I don't think they're the same at all. I think they're qualitatively
Okay,
different
good,
and
yeah.
not quantitatively different.
Okay.
They're totally different.
Yeah.
I think it's like the difference between somebody who's a really good, like, university PhD level moral philosopher.
Yeah.
And then somebody who's actually like a good person.
Yeah.
Like it's just not the same at all. Like one is it's totally conceptual and then the other is totally like actual.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
the totally conceptual moral philosopher,
Yeah.
really if that is what my conception of the ideal person would be, then he would, if the situation came about to do action, then every single time he would perfectly do the action. It's just the situation never comes about, and that's why he doesn't do action.
What? I got lost there.
I'm saying that you could, this perfect guy is really a good person. He just never has the situation to act on his good personness.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying like what if that was the case?
No, I'm saying that you could have this perfect guy who has only thought. The only reason why he's not acting out these thoughts is because he never had the opportunity.
He's
Yeah.
alone in the wilderness.
Right.
Right.
Like,
Like the opportunity came about.
So that-
Right.
so
Meaning,
that-
like, just as an extreme example, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that if God commanded Moshe to sacrifice his son on the Akedah, then Moshe would have totally been able to do it. It's just that that never came about.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, so if that possibility, if like the possibility to do that action never came about, then there's some lack there, yeah. But he's on a qualitatively different level. I mean, I'm sorry that opportunity never came about to you, but it didn't. And
Yeah,
so-
see,
such.
I still haven't expressed, I don't think I expressed this yesterday. The only thing that's giving me doubt and aligning me with what Oren is saying is perfection as a human being, okay, is not just the soul. Perfection of the human being is also your physicality, is your psyche. And if your psyche hasn't been impacted by that, then your knowledge might be like perfected, but there is something lacking in the psyche that hasn't been impacted by that, which you can only do if you're in the situation.
Well,
Yeah.
right, if you have the perfect soul knowledge, wouldn't your psyche fall in line?
That's what I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that, if that's the case. Yeah, I think that is the question. That's a more precise way of saying the question, yeah.
Would you also be able to say that both your knowledge of the area and your psyche are also affected and changed by experience?
Yeah, well, so I think this is part of the question here also, is that when we, here's the question, right? When we talk about your knowledge being real to you, okay? Like, is that a function of is that a quality in the knowledge, or is it a quality in the impact on the organism? You know, in other words, like, could you have knowledge that's real to you that just hasn't expressed itself in action or whatever, for whatever reason? Or would we say the fact that, are we just back at the Plato-Aristotle debate about the good? Oh man, got us again. I forgot who said this, that and Mormon Adler quotes it. It's possible, as Bertrand Russell, someone said, like, the entirety of Western philosophy is a series of footnotes written on Plato, and most of the footnotes were written by Aristotle. Yeah. You know, so like it's not surprising that we're here. But here's the thing. Sorry, just sidebar commentary here. Do you feel the difference between the way we've been having the discussion that emerged organically from learning and from the question, as opposed to if we just open up, there's a machlokas between Plato and Aristotle on this point, let's debate it abstractly. And we are debating abstractly, but I'm saying, like, this was like a natural arriving at it. We didn't even know what we were talking about this yesterday, you know? Yeah, but I think it is the same question. Yeah, I forgot who was, you gonna say something? Oh yes, this is, just say it again. I lost the train of thought.
As far as your knowledge being incomplete and your psychic also being complete without the experience. Yeah. Right. So the question is it just like like in a similar vein of, say, like how we can say, like, understand things that are abstract, but if it's not physical, we can't actually know these things.
Right. Yeah.
I think like a similar manner, if you haven't gone through the experience, you can't actually know the experience.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you just spell out the Plato-Aristotle.
Yeah, meaning that that if you know something is good but act against it, right? So do we say that your knowledge of that, if you know that smoking is unhealthy and you smoke anyway, then is it possible to say, yeah, you know it's unhealthy, but you're like overwhelmed by your taiva? Or does the fact that you are overwhelmed by your taiva mean that your knowledge is not real to you, that your knowledge is lacking? So here too, would we say that generosity, which is not being expressed in action, even circumstantially, right? This is pushing the case even further. Even circumstantially, is the quality of generosity lacking because you haven't expressed it in action, or would we say no, it's there 100%, it just hasn't been actualized? Yeah. I
mean, I think in the case of shiur, I think I would see it to, as I was saying, but I think it is achievable. Like, you don't need to actually have done the action in order to have full shuva, which is, I think, like, perfection in this area. You won't know that you have.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and
that's clear.
It's much harder to do.
Right. Yeah. I think that part's all clear. Yeah.
I want to object. No. I don't think the cases are parallel, because in the case of Teshuva Gemara, you know the action that you're talking about and you know what it means to do that action. Versus in this case, where you've never split the sandwich and given it away, you can't relate to that action at all. Like Teshuva Gemara, right? The guy eats a pig, right? So he can relate to that. He can say, "This is something that I regret. I don't want to do. This is like a concrete thing that I've experienced." Right. But in this other case, it's not like that at all.
Yeah, it's a fair objection. Yeah.
I think what we're discussing is a bit different than the Plato-Aristotle debate. Yeah. Because they're debating if you didn't split the sandwich, do you have the knowledge or not? Could you have the knowledge? We're saying a separate question about, is it possible to get the knowledge if the situation to split the sandwich didn't come?
Yeah. It is a different question, but I do think it's related, because I do think some of it pertains to how knowledge of the good, what we mean by perfection of knowledge of the good. And it's also different because they were talking about knowledge. Here we're talking about a midah, but the way that we're explaining the midah is that it's a function of your knowledge. So that's like the route in there. Okay, here's what I vote for, since we only got through Saadia Gaon, which is great. I'm glad we had this discussion. I would like to do meforshim on this tomorrow instead of Q&A. Okay, and we have time, we could do Q&A, but we're not gonna have time. Yeah. All righty, sounds good.
Thank you.
There's a
Yeah,
time
thanks
to
for
discuss
coming.
this.